Try to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark, aka Derringer. Today is Sunday, October 6th, and you are listening to episode 229 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So what's been going on with me? As you guys know, last week was my birthday on Tuesday. Yes, I am an old man now, tired old man, and that's about it. I did actually play quite a bit of Planetside Arena this past week. Now, I'd pop in for like maybe 2 matches each night. One night I played with Murda. Other nights I just kind of played with random people. I won a few matches. I lost the majority of the matches, but I have been trying to give Planetside Arena a little more of my time because I want to make sure that I give it a fair shake before I just completely decide not to play it at all. And, you know, I do find that there are some parts of it that I do enjoy. There are still some parts of it that I do not enjoy. But again, I've definitely been trying to give it a fair shake this past week, and I'll try to continue to do that as it progresses along. And I'm actually going to talk about some of that progression on this week's show. I did also finally get back into Planetside 2 as well. The guys in Bushido Way who I've been playing with, they've been on a little bit of a break because of Planetside Arena. Well, we were back on Friday, and I put a couple hours worth of Planetside 2 gameplay in with them. Remembered why I love Planetside 2 so much when I was playing with them. And it was just good to get back into playing Planetside 2 as well as the various games of Planetside Arena that I played. But enough about me. What's in store for this week's show? Well, first I have the Early Access Update number 2 for Planetside Arena to talk about. And then after that, Planetside Arena lead designer Carto was nice enough to produce a short intro of himself on the Planetside Arena Reddit, along with answering a lot of other questions recently. So I'm going to talk about his intro a little bit. And then after that, I want to talk about a post that I wanted to cover last week but wasn't able to, and that is why there won't be a Planetside 3. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So first up this week, like I said, the Planetside Arena Early Access Update number 2 was released on October 3rd, and the devs said that obviously they are wrapping up the changes to that weekly update, which notice that they said it's a weekly update, which means we could be seeing an update like this each week as we move forward, which I think would be a good thing. But they did say that they continue to focus on overall game polish and improvements, and their goal this past week was centered around match pacing and escalating squad engagements. So they incorporated a new system that allows them to adjust pain field behavior dynamically based on population, because obviously we know the maps themselves were created to support 1,000 or more players, and they're certainly not at those numbers right now. I mean, in fact, I was playing games over the past week with as little as 30 some odd players in them, and some over 100, but the majority of them were on the much lower scale. So it's nice to see that they're making an adjustment to fit pain field behavior dynamically based on this match population. So because of these changes, squad engagement should be a lot quicker. and overall match completion time should be noticeably shorter when starting pops are low. And I will say that I definitely did notice that in the past, and I'm talking 2 weeks ago when I was playing Planetside Arena, there seemed to be those long periods where you'd drop in, you'd loot, and then you wouldn't see anybody until almost the end of the match when everything came to a head in the center location. Whereas now, when you've got smaller groups of people, it definitely is shrinking the map faster or shrinking the map dynamically. And I've gotten into a lot more earlier fights than I would have when I was previously playing it. So I can definitely say that these changes that they incorporated are working to make matches that are smaller sizes at least go a little bit faster. They also stated that they've made some changes to weapon underbarrels to make them accessible across all weapon lines and more intuitive to use. They said that while they were watching streams this week, they found that some players didn't even know underbarrels existed, so they thought that these changes would be necessary. Other improvements that they worked on include communicating with squad mates that are still alive when spectating, several combat improvements, performance optimizations, and other anti-cheat measures. They also said they've enjoyed watching people participate in their Flash weekend events, so expect to see more things with some better prizes coming soon. So to watch for some of those things. So now when we talk about the actual game updates themselves, like I said, that first one was the dynamic pane field improvement. So basically, they're trying to escalate squad engagement, which I feel that they have during low pop times. So they've made several adjustments to the location squads drop in, and as a result of that, pane field behavior. So officially, during lower pop matches, squads will deploy closer to the initial safe zone and in proximity to other squads. And this explains why, like I said, I seem to be running into fights a lot sooner than I had been previously. And then it says, in addition, depending on match population thresholds, the time between phases and speed at which the pane field moves will also vary. The lower the population, the shorter wait times between phases, and the faster the pane field migrates to the actual center of that ring. Moving on, they've changed the message of the day rotator, which they added to the main menu. So the nice thing about that is they've actually got something on the main menu that shows this game update is one of the ones that's being shown now, so you can get more information about the game, which is a good thing. They also added so that spectators are now allowed to voice chat with their teammates, and that means that even if you are dead and spectating, you can still talk to your team, which is actually very good. They made the aforementioned weapon underbarrel enhancements, so now no matter what the weapon rarity you have the underbarrel, and upgrading your weapon decreases the underbarrel cooldown. They also gave underbarrels their own key, so by default that's mapped to the letter B, as in boy, instead of tapping the weapon number twice to switch to it. Obviously, you can change the key bindings for that if you wanted to. And you can also now interrupt reloads to switch to your underbarrel at any time. They also improved the headshot, body shot, shield break, and vehicle hit indicator sound effects. They changed it so the minimap is now fully zoomed out by default at the start of matches. They also changed it so default mods are now automatically equipped for new players, which I think is huge, because if you don't even know mods are available in the game itself, and I will say that I was someone who this happened to, I didn't even know that I could go into my character loadout and that I had mods to start the game with. Because obviously if you start the game for the first time ever, you don't have any mods in your guns, you don't have any mods on your character class. You're basically going in naked to that effect. And so now the fact that they're giving the default mods automatically for new players, that is a good change to the game itself. Also, moving on, match end screens now show revives and damage done, and they removed nanites gained and the accuracy number. They also cleaned up the main menu 12-player lobby. They also optimized lobby data updates for a performance improvement, and they also added the additional anti-cheat improvements, like I said earlier in the show. There were also a bunch of bug fixes that they put in place. Some of the bigger ones is they safeguarded some of the code to prevent deployables such as engineer turrets from being placed underground. And now players are now able to voice chat while they are downed as well. In addition to a bunch of other smaller bugs that they actually fixed in this update itself. I do think that voice chat while downed is a really big one to be included into the game itself. So there is your entire early access update number 2. I do hope that when they say weekly update that we are going to be seeing another weekly update this week, and I'll be able to talk about that on next week's show if it happens. Fingers crossed. So the second topic this week was an intro that was done by Carto, who is the lead designer on Planetside Arena. Now, in addition to this, I've noticed quite a lot more interaction with the devs on the Planetside Arena subreddit. I think the majority of their interaction in the past was just on the official Planetside Arena forums, but I think much like the Planetside 2 forums, not a lot actually gets done there, and I think more people gravitate towards the Planetside Arena Reddit, so it's /r/PS Arena. So I would highly recommend you joining that subreddit, if you are someone who Reddits a lot like I do, because, like I said, the devs, and it's not just Carto, because I've seen Andy Seitz talking on there. I've seen Justin on there as well. There's definitely more people looking at and responding to the various posts that are on the PS Arena subreddit. So again, if you're not on it right now, it's probably a good idea to get on there because they're definitely reading and responding to them. So going back to Carto's intro, he said that he wanted to drop an intro before he started posting on stuff, just to give some insight and context on who he actually is. Again, he is the lead designer on Planetside Arena. He's been a game dev for about 8 years, and in the past, he's worked at other studios, including Tryon Worlds and also at PlayStation itself. He says he started his career with level design, has also moved on to system, economy, and combat designs. And basically, in terms of what he does on Planetside Arena, is that he typically takes the reins when something is gameplay driven. And this could be combat, movement, modes, etc. And so he is definitely welcome to hear you fire away any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding those various gameplay driven things in Planetside Arena. And from what I've seen of him, he does enjoy interacting with the community. If you follow him on Twitter, he's under game_dev_Carto. And I know he also live streams a lot. I've seen his live streams going on all the time. And he doesn't just play Planetside Arena or Planetside 2, things like that. He plays a lot of different games. So definitely don't think that you're just going to be pigeonholed into a Daybreak Games title if you follow him on Twitter or follow him on Twitch, because I know he does a lot more than just the Daybreak Games titles. And that goes on to his next point, where he says he does enjoy interacting with everyone and also digging in on what is working and what is not working, because he understands that the design process has many levels, and sometimes how a design is spec'd out on paper is not how it works in the real world. And he understands that. He does feel that community interaction is a key component when gathering insight and for keeping a finger on the pulse of the game to really understand what a community is feeling. And he does say that he's always happy to answer what he can and provide insight on decisions or why they're going in a particular direction, as long as it's in his wheelhouse. So again, he encourages anybody with questions to just shoot them over to him. And like I said, he's been very active on the Planetside Arena subreddit in the past few days regarding this. Lastly, he does want to address toxicity because he appreciates feedback for the game, but he is not going to stand for abject toxicity from the community itself. So if you're just going to post a comment like, the decision to do X is really dumb, you should just quit, he's not going to take the time to respond to your comment or anything about that. If you phrase that question, a completely different way, such as, I don't understand why you did X, it messes up mechanic Y, or really ruins the moment-to-moment gameplay, maybe you should have done something differently like this, that will go a long way to actually getting a response from him. And he's been responding to a lot of the, quote-unquote novels that people have been posting on the subreddit with some pretty decent feedback as to why they're doing what they're doing. And again, it's not just him, because I see that Andy Seitz is doing the exact same thing as what he's doing, because we've got... there's a really good topic, and I don't want to give it its own topic, so I'm going to piggyback it on this one, because everybody seems to be complaining about the population of Planetside Arena at this point. And let's not split any hairs on this. The number of people playing Planetside Arena is abysmally low. And one of the Reddit users called Call the Cav asked a question regarding population. He said he's been looking forward to the game. He thinks they've built a solid foundation, but what's causing him not to play frequently is the population. And he goes to quote that the 24-hour high was like 140 players. And he wants them to focus on advertising and getting the population up to where it's higher than it is now. And like I said, Andy Seitz was nice to actually give a response, which I thought was a fair response. And he wrote that this is a pretty common question and totally valid. So let me try to shed a little light on why there has been no major promotion marketing of PSA yet. And he goes on to say that back in the day when early access became a thing, the intent was to use it as a method of testing at scale, incorporating player feedback and adding/refining core features/game systems that the developer believed to be critical for launching the game. Once the goals are achieved, the early access is exited and it becomes a launched product. And he specifically says, as many people are aware, developers, and he says, including them with the H1Z1 game, lingered for months, years, or even indefinitely with the early access tag. I'm really appreciative that he, mentioned that he understands they did that with H1Z1, and that is one of the main reasons that H1Z1 died the slow death that it did. He goes on to say that for Planetside Arena's free-to-play early access release, their goal was to play the game at a scale that was not possible with just internal play sessions. Internal play sessions, obviously, is their small team of folks playing the game. They needed more information than that. So they started to push that out to incorporate feedback from the community so that they could better refine the game itself. And he says this is why developers started using early access in the first place. And he says this is their intent and they're committed to delivering on it. And he goes on to say that this is why we've seen so many improvements and bug fixes being published over the past 2 weeks, and also why they're hard at work on new features like a ping system, a quick chat, a text chat, new modes, and more than that. And he finishes by saying it's their goal to keep making improvements to the game so they can exit early access as quickly as possible. During that time, the most valuable thing that he can ask from the community is to continue to provide with as much feedback as possible on the changes they're making in order to help us make PSA the amazing game that they envision it can be. So again, I felt that this was a fair response from Andy, and I'm glad that he posted something like this, because I do think the biggest complaint right now with Planetside Arena is the lack of population. So now at least we know the thinking behind what they were actually doing with early access for Planetside Arena. Now, granted, we had test groups of folks, but I don't think that they got as many people in the closed beta testing as they wanted in the closed beta testing. I include myself in that group. I didn't play it as much as I wanted to play it when they were beta testing it in the closed beta. So I do think that it was probably a smarter decision for them to actually go into early access, because at least this gives anybody on PC who wants to try out the game the ability to try out the game, no strings attached. And we have to admit, getting some people into your game is better than not getting anybody into your game to play around with it. Because even in a 33-player squads match, which really aren't the most fun to be into, it did make them realize that, hey, we need to change where people are spawning. We need to make the fights happen quicker so that these smaller matches can end faster with a winner and people can move on to the next match. So, again, I felt it was a fair response from Andy, and I do look forward to continued updates from them regarding this, and I hope that he continues to make the improvements he says he's going to make so that they can exit early access as quickly as possible. And again, the roadmap says that Q2 2020, and that's as early as April of next year. So if it's October now, that's 6 months away when they're supposed to be out of early access at that point. So again, I kind of piggybacked on top of the information that came from Carto, but I thought it was important to say, again, the devs are reading the Planetside Arena Reddit, and they're responding to it. So if you have any burning questions, I would definitely suggest you get over there and post them. And I'd love to see a lot more stuff come from the community, because obviously they're looking for community feedback, and we can certainly provide it to them. With that, let's move on to the third and final topic this week. And that topic, like I said, it was by a Reddit user named Rundarist, or Rundar First. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. And he had posted why there probably won't be a Planetside 3. And I thought this was a well thought out post that he put together. It kind of made me sad, because I am a fan of the Planetside franchise. As you guys know, I've told you in the past, I played the original Planetside, when it came out, and I played it a lot. I played it a long time, and I enjoyed it. I've played Planetside 2 since 2012. The 8th anniversary of Planetside 2 is coming up, and I have been playing this game non-stop pretty much for 8 years, with some small breaks here and there. I've almost been podcasting about this game for 8 years at this point. So when I saw this post, I wanted to talk about it a little bit, because I unfortunately agree with a lot of the things that he said, and that kind of makes me sad. And his first point was that the reason there probably won't be a Planetside 3 is because, in the grand scheme of things, he doesn't consider that Planetside 2 was successful. So he says if you go by the numbers, it didn't become profitable until early 2015, and that's 2 years obviously after it was released. Peak populations declined significantly within the first couple months that it was being played. Within 2 years, the population was 77% less than its original, and today, we're looking at a peak population of about 2,000 or so people, and that's pretty much a reduction of 93% from its original launch back in 2012. Because of that, it's obviously been declining in population base, and I think that you can most likely say that as a result, where it is at this point, Planetside 2 probably wasn't the huge success that I think Sony, SOE, and now Daybreak Games wanted it to be. Am I happy with Planetside 2? Sure. I enjoy the game, but I understand also that I am a subset of the players, of all gamers out there. And, I have latched on to a specific title that I think is my favorite game of all times, Planetside 2. And I recognize that I'm in that small subset, but I'm in that peak population of over 2,000 players who continues to play Planetside 2 because I enjoy the game. But I think we can agree that it's not the rousing success that I think SOE and Daybreak Games wanted it to be. I mean, I consider Apex Legends a much bigger success, a newer game that just came out recently, rather than Planetside 2. He goes on to say that his second point is that the lore of the Planetside universe no longer allows room for a Planetside 3. And I think he's spot on here, unless Planetside 3 takes place sometime between Planetside 2 and Planetside Arena, because we've already established lore with Planetside Arena that says the 3 factions devolved into no factions, and everybody is now a mercenary for Nanite Systems, and that's basically how Planetside Arena is playing. Whereas obviously with Planetside 2, you've got your 3 factions, and in order for there to be a Planetside 3, I do think we'd still need to have the complete 3 factions within the game to make it a Planetside game. Now, and that, again, that's saying that if Planetside 3 is supposed to occur after Planetside Arena, there's really no way that I can think of off the top of my head for the lore to, make the mercenaries split apart into 3 different groups. And I agree with what he wrote regarding that. He also goes on to say that his third point is the genre of MMO FPS have unresolved issues themselves. And he says the primary problem of this genre is there's no easy way to force players to fight each other. And he says in Planetside 2, we saw a perfect example. At first, there were hexes, any of which could be attacked at once. This created a problem where players would either avoid each other or simply ignore a large portion of the map. Then we got the lattice system, which did force players to fight each other. However, it created zergs. So he shows that there is that unresolved issue in MMO FPS games that you don't have in a Battle Royale game or in a conquest type game such as the Battlefield series, the Call of Duty series. I think we can all agree on that one as well. His fourth point is that Planetside Arena currently exists. If Planetside Arena didn't exist, then clearly you'd think, they should be working on Planetside 3. But unfortunately, Planetside Arena exists, and it's basically changed the genre of Planetside into a battle royale game. So where some of us would think that they should have focused all their efforts on a Planetside 3, a new MMO FPS, instead they've decided to go the Planetside Arena route, which again makes it very little chance that they might be working on a Planetside 3. And his last point is that it would take too much to make Planetside 3. And I sort of agree with him on this one, and a lot of that is regarding the engines that are being used for it. The graphics are really dated at this point, so they'd have to rework all the graphics for it. And in addition to that, something he didn't even mention is you're missing the giant weight of SOE that Planetside 2 had, and also the personality of someone like Smedley. Now, I know everybody has their own opinion on Smedley and how he may have, hurt the Planetside franchise with everything that he did, but he was such a large presence in the game creating community that I think he was the one who could pull off a Planetside 3, but I think that ship has sailed. So as disappointing as a topic as this one is, I think the Reddit user Runderist is pretty much spot on as to why we're not going to see a Planetside 3, and that does make me kind of sad in this day. And maybe we're just reading too much into it, and we could get a Planetside 3 someday, but with the direction the industry for this seems to be going in, like I said, they're going to a Battle Royale game instead of another MMO FPS game. It makes me think we're probably not going to see a Planetside 3, unfortunately. But with that, let's wrap up this week's show by moving on to housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So in housekeeping, I don't have any specific emails or anything like that to read this week, but I did get quite a few people on Twitter and Reddit and everything wishing me a happy birthday. So I did just want to take a moment to thank you guys for doing that. I do really appreciate it. But otherwise, I think that's going to be it for this week's show. So how can you get in touch with me or the show? Your first stop should always be my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can also email me at instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can call me at 347-4VM-4PS2. Those digits are 347-486-4772. And you can follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.
The oldest Planetside player, and he still has the brain of a 12-year-old.